Just gone after midday, so we've moved. We didn't all have to wake up bright and early this morning. We are no longer at the virtual property breakfast. We are at the virtual property event, thanks to our extensive marketing team. That's right, sandwiches instead of croissants. As always, we have our great panel of experts. We have Nerida Conisbee with us today, Ray White's chief economist, Matt Lancashire, principal partner right across our Ray White and Living Here network, which we will be referring to as our collective network under our new branding, so the collective team of Ray White, and Christine Rudolph, prestige salesperson and inner city specialist, who will be talking to us right about the market. In Studio 2 today, we have our principal partners from right across Brisbane, who we will hear from during the show. Ruben Packer-Hill from Ray White at Toowong, Brandon Wortley and Scott Darwin from Ray White at Bulimba and East Brisbane, and Nick Given from Ray White at Clayfield. But let's get into it. Lots of data to cover. So much talk, Nerida, about the market. Another rate rise likely going to come in a couple of days. I know you've got some great data to run through on that. I'm going to hand over the clicker to you, and let's kick this ball into play.
All right. Well, it has been a very different 6 months compared to the 6 months of 2021. But I guess the good news is that the worst is over. The worst was actually in June last year. We can now clearly see that was when we saw the biggest drop in pricing. Prices are now really starting to stabilise. So not just here, we didn't see a big price drop here in Brisbane, but certainly in Sydney, Melbourne, where prices really came back. We're seeing prices really stabilising. Interest rates, I'll talk about that in a sec. So in terms of the economy, we're not doing too badly. We're going quite well from a global perspective. GDP is running at about a long-term average. We still have a very tight labour market, so there's not many jobs, not many people unemployed. It's actually the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. Wow. So we are starting to see that weaken very slightly, but not really on the unemployment rate, mainly on the number of job vacancies. So in many ways it is good news because it was really hard to get staff. Interest rates are still on the move, as Paisley said. The big issue being inflation, which dropped a bit in October, picked up again in November. So,
and what is your prediction for tomorrow, Tuesday?
Definitely an increase. It'll be only a 0.25. So it is likely we'll see 2 more increases. What we are clearly seeing.
Including Tuesday. Hey, all right. Oh, I like that news.
Yeah,
that's good news.
The reason being is that inflation seems to have peaked. A lot of the drivers of inflation have really pulled back. Fuel prices, the block supply chains. China's back open. There's a lot going on that is really helping with inflation. But US inflation has also dramatically pulled back. So they hit a peak in November of about 9.1%. They're sitting at about 6.5%. So it is likely we will get through it pretty quickly and things will start to look a bit better. I'm guaranteed by June, prices will have started moving upwards everywhere in Australia. So in terms of the economy, just talking through some strengths and weaknesses, we're in a good place on a global level. The UK has almost certainly gone into recession. The Zealand's looking really tough at the moment. But we're doing well because international migration is back, got lots of new students, mining is really strong. That's obviously good for the WA and Queensland economies. A few challenges, retail trade came back a bit in December, but probably was as expected as the economy slows down a bit. Building approvals have plummeted, and also that inflation level is still high, but starting to improve.
Just on that point, Nerida, when you talk about retail trade, I would imagine that is, again, with the rising interest rates, people just being a little bit more conscious of their spending. Would that be it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was surprising it didn't drop quicker, and because people's mortgage rates have been increasing dramatically, and the other issue being that inflation has really taken hold and it's quite expensive in general.
Yeah.
So people were still spending a lot in November, but it seems like by December everyone was kind of like, oh, hang on a second, I might start to watch my money. Savings rates have been eroded though, so people have been getting into their savings to help.
Words that I've been hearing a little bit is when rates dropped, people were overpaying a bit of loan repayments. They didn't lower a lot of them to meet the drop in interest rates, so they've been drawing into those overpayments. Is that?
Yeah, that would be one way of saving. I mean, when we look at household savings rates, it did hit a record level during the pandemic. Wow. So everyone, or not everyone, but the majority of people in Australia did put a lot of money away.
That's a bad thing. People are saving. Let's stop.
I know. We need to get them to spend, keep the economy going. So construction costs are still a problem. You can see here they have remained high in the last inflation numbers, but that rate of change does seem to be flattening out a bit. So hopefully we should start to see that pull back. A lot of the things that are driving that are starting to improve. For Queensland, migration is very high, and that net interstate migration has pulled back a bit, but primarily because people from Melbourne and Sydney aren't moving here at quite the rate they were.
Or could it be that they're already here?
Well, that spike probably shows that the people that wanted to move have probably moved at that point, but it's still high. I mean, if you look at it that's the grey line from a national perspective, from a historical perspective, it's still very high level of net interstate. And then the yellow overseas is really picking up here, which is interesting because Sydney and Melbourne do tend to attract the bulk of international migrants, but Queensland is getting a lot of them this cycle. So looking at Brisbane inner city, you can see their prices have come back a little bit. Not inner city, this is inner Brisbane. I think that's the SA4 Brisbane inner city. Unit prices haven't moved at all. So this downturn, nothing's happened. But houses, and you can see there right at the end that little bit of a kick up. There does seem to be that the last couple of months that some markets have started to move upwards very, very slowly. So a little bit early to say whether this is a really sharp recovery, but it does look like things have definitely stabilised in this part of Australia. Looking around Australia, I won't draw too much on this, but you can see there that pretty variable conditions. Brisbane has only fallen by 1.5% over the past 12 months. Compare that to Sydney and Melbourne, which are, as I mentioned earlier, really seeing a very, very strong decline. Adelaide is still increasing, so that's a bit of a surprise.
Is it migration?
It's partly migration. I think it's, and also because it's
wine.
quite cheap.
It's the Barossa
yeah,
Shiraz.
maybe it's the
Shiraz.
Barossa.
That's why they call it Radelaide.
Yeah. Affordability. In terms of listings, there isn't much out there to buy, so it'd be interesting to hear what the guys have to say about this market, but certainly across Australia, listings are down 20% compared to the same time last year.
Do you think, Nerida, that correlates to construction costs being so high, there's less homes being built, so therefore there aren't as many homes on the market because we're not producing as many homes? Yeah,
that's absolutely a factor. Also, I think people are a little bit uncertain on the outlook. So that uncertainty is worse than what actually happens. I think once there's certainty in the market, people feel a little bit more comfortable, but I think that's also a factor. Rental growth is accelerating and is going to get worse because we've got lots of people moving here. So Brisbane is leading the way, 31.8% increase. So these are advertised rents. This will be flowing through to sitting rents as well.
But do you know from our property management, normally go, advertised rents when it comes through it'll be lower. No, we're seeing advertised rents and it comes through and it's higher. Tenants so keen to get in are offering more money.
Yes. Yes, there's there's such a shortage here because of the weather, what happened with the flooding. That was a big factor, so it wiped out a lot of rental properties, and we need to get building more properties in Brisbane, a lot more construction taking place. Still accelerating migration, as I mentioned before. And then when we look at rental listings, and nationally we have a problem, there's just not enough. So there's always a lot of negativity at the moment around investors, and investors, wanting more money. But the reality is we need more investors. We need to work out a way where we encourage more of them, and we need a way to encourage more building as well, because we're not going to fix this issue of this long-term decline in rental listings unless that's resolved. Rental yields are up. See there they did drop to very, very low levels in Brisbane, got down to less than about 3% for houses. So they're on the way up, partly because rents are growing so fast, but also prices are declining a little bit. And then when we have a look at borrowing, this is new loans. So new loans, not surprising, interest rates are rising, people are finding it harder to borrow, and you can't borrow as much, so that's pulled back. But what's really interesting is refinancing. You can see there that everyone is refinancing, is quite worried about what's happening, and there are good deals. I think that's one. I don't know if we've got anyone from loan market today, but really good time to refinance a deal. You'll find a new deal for your home loan. First home buyers really have pulled back. They did hit almost a record level during the pandemic. Primarily home builder was a big factor. I think Hazley will speak a little bit about that market a bit later on. And that's all I've got. So I'll hand it back to Hayden.
I mean, there's so much to unpack there. I mean, so for those of you watching, what Nerida brings to this is a real macro view. It's our view right across the country, what's happening in markets. And just off air before we came and spoke today, we discussed that when we look in the rear vision mirror, just as a business, you know, we've got 150 people as a part of our group right across the inner city of Brisbane. And we said, okay, turn of just raw business data, our P&L. June, July and August last year was shocking, you know, in terms of that we saw a change. When you're in it, you don't know. And then a recorrection. People started to feel it, look at it. 8 interest rate rises. I can understand that first home buyer pullout. 8 interest rises in a year. You're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just wait. Can I tell you from the front line, and you're going to hear this from Christine and Matt and our other panellists today, the data from the front line is they've come out of Christmas at a completely different speed. The speed, and you'll hear these stories today, the slide of the macro view, which is looking in the rear vision mirror, and this data is looking in the rear vision mirror what it was. We didn't realise what it was until we've looked back now. But what it is actually happening today is quite outstanding. So I'll take you through a couple of the things. Again, this is October to December last year. You can already start to see the open for inspection attendees is up year on year. 2,000 more attendees have turned into properties. Unconditional sales though. So you go, well, how long are people going to look for? You see that it was right down in the, well, we didn't see the quarter before, but you can see that where they're sitting is lower than this time the year before, and that makes sense because last year was the unstable year. And people, when they dive into the data, they go, oh, Brisbane's down whatever percent. They go, well, let's put that in perspective. That only takes it back about 8 months. You know, we're only talking about an 8 months. So it's roared up, and then to 35%, it's pulled back to whatever it pulled back at. So this unconditional sales is October to December, and you can see on the 3-year trend line, it's back to 2020. Number of deals where we sit was about par, again with 2 years ago, but you can see our average price was sitting pretty well in line with where it's at this time last year. Property management figures, lots of people are chasing this. This is really frontline data. This shows that inquiries for rental properties was pretty strong, but you look at that on the surface and go, gee, it's not a lot more than last year. Well, I can tell you it is because the number of available properties is so low compared to this time last year. This is like double and triple the amount of inquiry. We've just got less properties available, and that is all seen in that application information. Everywhere you look, applications are up. 1,750 rental applications is our own data from one rent roll in inner city Brisbane in a 3-month period. That is just huge. We've got some properties with 30 tenants applying. Leases, you can see, pretty strong. We are seeing that 1,000+ market start to stabilise a bit, and that's again because a lot of those people are moving out to be purchasers in the market. And our arrears, people, tenants, they are, of course, they're paying their rent. That's certainly not a part of the market at the moment. Rents are coming in great time for investors.
I just wanted to draw on to what Nerida was saying about encouraging more investors back into the market. You know, when you have a look at that, what a stable form of investment for people to have by having a Brisbane property with really low arrears and incredibly high returns.
Yeah, and growing returns. You've got, like, Matt, you'd be hearing it as well at the front line. This is a golden decade. I mean, people are coming here looking at Brisbane. Prices are low, things are coming. You must be hearing that.
It's interesting. It's if you're coming from interstate and or overseas, the value proposition to buy property in Brisbane is still relatively good. The gap has narrowed a little bit, but it's still affordable. And it's a beautiful place to live, which will probably take me into your bit.
Well, I think it's got to be the best 10-year outlook with daylight behind it of anywhere in the country. And we're just seeing so much evidence. And again, Matt, I can't wait to hear your session. I can't wait to hear from our other panellists today about what's happening now. We want to look at the rear vision mirror a bit as well for people to know, but what's happening now.
So a great way to get into it of what's actually happening in our marketplace, and particularly in the prestige market across Brisbane, is a relevant case study of a property we sold in December, which was 93 Macquarie Street. Beautiful development along Tenerife riverfront there. There's 18 properties in that development, all freehold houses. So the highest price that was ever paid for property in the Catalina development was in 2007 for $5.7 million. So about 6 years ago, I sold this house to the current owners for $5.5 million. They had spent a little bit of money on it since the time which they purchased it. But going back in December, we took it to auction. We had 14 registered bidders on this property, and we sold it for the suburb record of $7 million. So,
Great
which is
result. It's phenomenal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a beautiful house.
Yeah, it really was.
it is. It's
Big,
It was big.
It was a big house. So it was the biggest of all of the land holdings along there, 517 square metres. The new buyers that have gone into it, which have just settled, they're going to be upgrading it to what they want it to be, which is awesome. So they'll be spending anywhere between $1 and $2 million on that. So that's showing what they believe is it's a good investment to put the money into it. So interestingly, off the back of that sale there, we listed 83, which is a smaller version. So as a square metre rate, we applied that same square metre rate across the sale of $7 million, and we're able to sell that one to one of the underbidders that came through for 6.15. So you can see the uplift from when they bought that originally. They bought it off the plan, and it must have been between
I was just
$1
about
and
to
$2
say
million.
that it's such a great development, that Catalina development. They're so tightly held, and they rarely exchange hands because of the position.
Well, it's the perfect apartment alternative, and they're northeast facing. So it's the only houses you can get along the northeast, apart from Amity probably, which is northeast facing. So and people don't sell.
No lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly right. So some of the factors that I've been seeing on the front line, I'm glad you brought up before, Hayes, was we're seeing a lot of expats coming home. So part of my market, my average sale price is around circa 5 million, and I'm seeing 50% of my inquiry coming from interstate and or overseas. Generally, the trend is still what it was last year. Singapore, Hong Kong, people that are tenure had been over in Asia for like 10 years plus. They used to have to come back to Sydney or Melbourne for the money. But now they're coming to Brisbane, and what I've seen just in January and February is a lot of these people hadn't been home for 5 years, or 3 to 5 years because of the quarantine. So to get into Australia it was 2 weeks, to go back to Hong Kong 3 weeks. So it's 5 weeks hotel quarantine just to come back for one trip. Then they're going back to their little apartments that they're living in Hong Kong, and they've had the most amazing time coming to Brisbane, going to the Carlisle, going to the coast, Noosa, and they're coming home.
You can see how he sells them out.
But again, in that top end, so we're seeing Sydney, Melbourne, a lot of the people, and migration numbers were slightly down, but what I'm seeing and what I mentioned before is a lot of the people are here renting properties, and now they're ready to buy. Another factor of why the high end's running so strong at the moment is a lot of these buyers aren't interest rate sensitive. So a lot of them are cash buyers. They're coming into the market with money. They've either sold, traded out of other properties, or have got quite a bit of wealth, and they're cash buyers. So that's been really positive. And what's really interesting is as stock level has gone down 20%, buyer inquiry's gone up by 25%, which is incredible. So we are launching properties to our website before going to the portals of Domain and realestate.com, and we're putting it online for 24 hours to get the ads approved by the owners, and we're getting 15, 20 inquiries overnight through our website.
It's extraordinary.
So they're going to all medians because stock levels are lower, all medians to try and find property before it hits the market. So I'm thinking the top end of town is going to be really positive for 2023.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Agreed.
and you can see why. I heard the data, you may have seen it as well, that just Ray White data across the country was open for inspection attendees was up 12.8% for so far this year.
Yeah, and we're seeing that on the front line, even more so. So our average open homes on last Saturday was between 20 and 30 groups for new properties that have launched to the market.
Yeah, I mean, I think you will hear this when we cross over to our panellists, to Scott and Brandon. You'll hear about some outstanding uplift in open for inspection numbers. But just to echo your comment, and I don't know if Ruben's covering it today, but in our Toowong business, 50% of the transactions in January, half of all the sales we did, were to people that had moved up last year or had just moved up from Melbourne and purchased property. Like half sales of a whole business. Which are those people?
Interesting. And do you think that's because a lot of them have just come off their 12-month leases and now they're going, this is where we want to send our kids to school, we're here to stay,
We're here to stay.
let's
We
buy.
wanted to test the market. We wanted to test where we want to live. We rent. We love it. Why
Exactly.
wouldn't you?
And you've got to think, logic comes into it. Like, when am I going to move my family up? It's going to be at the start of the year. So I'm going to get in January, get the kids settled, do a year. I'm going to probably not do it in December because life's hectic. I'm going to bolt out of those gates though in January and lock this property
The
down.
New Year's resolutions, the frustration from missing out on properties last year, not understanding the true value of the properties in the market, and going, let's go buy. And that's where I think a lot of the transactions have kicked off in 2023.
All right, I'm really excited about this next step. We're going to go through our market flyover. Christine Rudolph is going to kick us in now. Christine, I've had a look at your notes. I'm really looking forward to hearing this. What are you seeing on the front line?
Well, we have some really interesting trends that we're seeing, Hazley, and I'll just have a look at those, that slide coming up now. So I'm just echoing what Matt said. We've actually done a 3-year snapshot of the best performers that we're seeing in the market. And what we're consistently seeing, the most sought after homes in Brisbane are riverfront homes and waterfront homes. Very interesting statistic as well. We're actually seeing a lot of people moving to the Newport Redcliffe Peninsula, and the highest growth for 2022 was actually Newport Canal homes. Would you believe?
Wow.
They actually grew by 53% last year, which is amazing. The other properties that we're really seeing that people love in our market are tennis court homes. I know Matt and Tom have got a big one coming up in Clayfield in a couple of weeks. You've set some great records in 2022 with those sort of homes. New builds, we're about to see a case study in a moment of a property that Matt and I sold showing the demand for new builds. Homes on a minimum of 809 square metres. They're generally those generational homes. People are sort of transacting into those with a 10 to 15 year hold. They're highly sought because...
It's quite rare. There's just not as you go to New Farm, there's only 40 homes over 809 square metres.
It's a beautiful size. 32 perch by that old scale is just... Everyone hunts that, right?
Absolutely. They're beautiful blue chip properties. New Farm riverfront apartments and fully renovated properties, and of course what Matt said, echoing about Tenerife. When we look at our 3-year snapshot here, the median price point for Tenerife is now $3 million, and the growth over 3 years is 59.2%, which is absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, the house in Tenerife you should have bought.
Did sell one in
I did
Tenerife
sell
just
one
before
too.
that.
So did I.
And that definitely echoes, this is core logic data, it's not our own data, this is core logic data right through to the end of December. This echoes exactly what Matt was saying about those Catalina homes and the uplift that Matt's seen on the Catalina homes. Again, New Farm, Tenerife, New Farm, they're the most sought after suburbs in Brisbane, uplift there of 64% in New Farm. And looking across our collective, we look at Hamilton, Ascot, Clayfield with Nick, with Reuben, and Scott and Brandon in Bulimba and Hawthorn. The uplift in our key collective suburbs has ranged anywhere from 45% right through to a high of 72.4% in Ascot, which is extraordinary.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You've got a great case study for us today. It's just around the corner from us here today.
Yeah, so this is one of Sean Lockyer's most magnificent homes. It's the Z House, which Matt and I sold just prior to Christmas. And again, we had a huge demand for this beautiful property.
250 groups through.
Yeah. It was incredible. And the thing about this, again, Sean Lockyer being such an iconic architect, where can you buy an 809 square metre block of land in New Farm now? And, how quickly can you build a beautiful Sean Lockyer home? I mean, you're looking at probably 2 years. That's exactly right.
You've got to find it. You've got to go through the planning, which is another year.
You've got to beg Sean.
You've got to beg Sean. He's not taking on clients till 2024.
Yeah.
There we
you
go.
get in, and then a year of design and council. So that's a 3 to 4 year process to be in a house.
Absolutely.
You can see why. I mean, this is...
So this was a hot. So again, these are local buyers vying for this property. We had multiple offers on it. The property was purchased in 2020 for just over $5 million, which was a record for the suburb at the time. That's exactly right. So we sold it with a 30% uplift. So it was well into the sixes, our sale price on that property. And again, illustrates the high demand for the 4005 postcode.
And 2 buyers, if I recall, at around the same price.
Absolutely. Well, we did actually have 3 local buyers running hot on that property, but 2 of them in particular went, fought for it all weekend in a multiple offer situation.
Was it local buyer?
Yeah.
Both local buyers,
Right. Yeah.
And
we had a good mix over the campaign between internationals and interstate.
That's right.
But it came down to the locals that pushed for it.
That's right. And again, this is another great case for local buyers because, one of the things that a lot of people sort of mistakenly think is it the interstate buyers and the overseas buyers who are pushing up our prices? Well, in fact, here's another example of a beautiful property. This is a developer who I know you've done a huge amount of work with, Matt, Capital Luxury Residences.
Building amazing homes.
They really are. So they are a great success story. They came up from Melbourne in 2019 with the strategy of actually buying blue chip sites. They've bought this beautiful property. We had 2 local buyers fighting for it, and it achieved a price record. Again, the local buyers bought this because they said it is much more cost effective to actually buy a brand new build than go out there, source the land and build it ourselves.
And Mayfield Street is
Mayfield's one of the
great.
fours.
I don't think you could. I don't know how you could find land in Mayfield
A post-war
Street,
house
build it.
to knock over and then do that.
And I think the owner of the property at the time, we all sat around and had the conversation. He's like, we're all just talking logical here. Like, this is, you can't do it. This is what it is. And of course the deal went and happened. Wonderful, great story, Christine, from the prestige end of the market right across the city. I'm going to cross over to our studio too, and we've got Scott Darwin's going to help this today. Scott's going to lead our team of panellists over there, of Ruben Packer-Hill from Ray White at Toowong. Scott Darwin and Brandon Wortley, of course, principal partners at Ray White, Bulimba East Brisbane, and Nick Given is there. It's a great story.
Yeah, thanks, Hayes. I'm not entirely sure where you lost me, but it was a great campaign, as you pointed out, the suburb record for a 405 block. It is a great part of Morningside and it does benefit from the overflow of Balmoral, Hawthorn and Bulimba buyers that just can't quite get there on price, so it's just that immediate alternative. But once again, brand new product, architectural, it's always going to see a high level of interest at the moment in the current construction pricing environment. We did touch on, and I'm so sorry if it's a double up on the information before, but we saw a massive influx of buyers into the market that I genuinely think just were waiting for the market to correct, and we just didn't see it in the inner city. So I feel like they've flooded really, really hard into the market December, January, with a really, really strong mid to long term outlook. So. Scott?
Keep going. These are the ones that you wrote.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. So again, I don't know where you lost me, but 2023 is extremely unlikely to 2022 with 8 interest rate rises, a flood and a pandemic. So I can't see us getting more activity than that in the negative sense. Those properties in that mortgage belt, may start to see a little bit more price pressure there as interest rates flow out. We do have a fair chunk of above fixed rate interest coming off that situation this year, so we'll keep a close eye on that. But in the inner city, with its high equity levels, being fairly strong security, we've got a massively strong outlook ahead of us.
Absolutely, we're very excited for this year, and based on everything we've seen so far, it should be a good one. Over to our Western Warrior.
Thank you very much,
Ruben Packer-Hill. How's it going in Toowong?
Thank you very much. Excellent so far. We're hitting on a 1-year anniversary, so it's super excited to step into the new year. Look, it seems to be a really common theme at the moment. January started really, really strong. In our suburban markets, we've seen inspection numbers almost double to what we saw in December. So an incredible start to the year, and obviously that gives us a really positive outlook for how this year should travel moving forward.
So really different to last year, this year to last year?
Definitely. And a different mix of buyers out in the market as well. Certainly we found, as Matt attested to earlier, interstate activity and inquiries up. Absolutely. And half of our sales for January were actually sold to interstate buyers. buyers that either moved up last year and taken a rental property, or they were still actively searching and inquiring over that Christmas holiday period.
And I feel like even there's certainly a portion of those interstate buyers that just don't identify as interstate buyers anymore. They classify themselves as local because they haven't been here, and so that could skew the figures slightly. But we've seen quite a few sight unseen buyers come back into the market, which I probably didn't see for maybe 3 or 4 months.
No.
But we've just had an influx of people that are happy to register unconditionally on an auction based on a video walkthrough and a few photos and a floor plan. So yeah, interesting to see that as well.
And I think a lot of that also has to do with the lack of supply that's out in the market overall. So there's certainly more urgency that we're still seeing.
Tell us about your case study here.
So a case study here, this is 2 apartments actually that Robin McElwain sold in the Lunar building, which is just around the corner from our office. This actually highlights the demand that's coming through now, not just from traditional investors, but mum and dad investors that are also seeing the value in purchasing rather than them paying rents. Also being bolstered by some of the infrastructure improvements with the Avery development in Toowong there, high-end retail, cinemas, medical facilities that are on their way, hopefully in the next year or 2. But interesting to note with this campaign, there were more inquiries off the Ray White website, in terms of our Ray White Toowong website, as opposed to the major portals, which is actually a trend that we're starting to see across our whole group with the collective. I did have another case study under here, which is looking at buyers that are prioritising ready-to-move-in homes. Brady Barry had an excellent in Barden, beautiful home that had recently renovated kitchen and bathrooms back in November. Plenty of interest early on with 38 buyer inspections in just 13 days, and the buyer actually prioritising this purchase as opposed to renovating their existing home. They saw a lot more value in just getting stuck in purchasing this property as opposed to paying the high renovation costs on their existing.
Of course, we're seeing that in a lot of different marketplaces.
Absolutely.
Now, off the back of a massive end of last year, you've had some huge results in your patch, and I don't want to dub you the king of Clayfield yet, but you're well and truly on your way. What's been happening up north?
I think over the Christmas period, it's normally a time where in Brisbane things go quiet.
Yeah.
You know, we all go away, and normally not a lot happens. And it was very different this year. I was away for a couple of weeks, and the inquiry just kept coming through.
It did, didn't it?
This house here, 11 Baldwin Street in Ascot, just on the water of Clayfield there. It actually sold 2 years ago. I remember we were running the campaign, and there was a bit of interest on it, but a gentleman from Melbourne came through. And he walked through the front door and he looked at it and he goes, "Are you telling me I can get this below $3 million, 1,009 square metres in the heart of Ascot?" I said, "Yeah," and he bought it straight away. Just relisted at the end of last year, exactly on 2 years since we sold it last time, and the identical thing happened. We marketed over the Christmas period, and a buyer came through from Melbourne, and they said, word for word, they were like, "This is this incredible value." So the perception of value is very different from Brisbane buyers to interstate buyers. And it's real. Interstate migration is real, and it's happening. On the front line, we're really seeing it. And that was a 600k uplift in 2 years. So it's interstate migration. Hopefully it just keeps happening.
A lot of those in Ascot Clayfield and that catchment really do, pull the heartstrings of those buyers that come from those Sydney and Melbourne equivalent suburbs.
And this particular buyer, he was like, "I can buy this now and keep it for a couple of years, and maybe if build costs come down, then I'll do the build."
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that starting to happen now, where people are looking to buy things and hold them for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because build costs will come down. It will come down sooner or later.
Yeah.
And these people buying them now are the ones who will win.
Exactly. Look, I think we're going to be singing from the same hymn sheet over the next 12 months, and that's buy and wait, don't wait to buy. And whether or not buyers want to try and absolutely pick whatever bottom of the market they perceive to be finding, we think it's going to be a pretty solid 12 months and beyond for Brisbane real estate.
Well, great. That's a wonderful overview. Thanks very much, Scott, to Brandon, Ruben, and to Nick. And thanks for staying with us during those technical difficulties where we tried to turn up our studio here today and just some movement between the studios. But I think we'll share all of the data live with everyone and all of these slides. So you'll pick that up as they come out to you. So if you do want a copy of that, just let us know. I think as we wrap up what is a really interesting time, Brisbane historically, certainly from our position as real estate agents, has always had this potential to go into Christmas at one speed and then come out at a very different speed. And I remember Peter Camford, who used to be the CEO of Ray White, he used to have this saying that he'd heard, which was market conditions precede market awareness. And I think what happened is the conditions of that first quarter, which was sort of the middle of that sort of July, August quarter last year, we didn't know when we were in it what we were in. We're looking back at it now going, wow, it was actually, we've all got these scars that we had from that quarter. But we've come out of it now, and gee, it didn't last that long. And I don't know, I'd love to, get the crystal ball out. We've got a little bit of time. I mean, I don't know if that's what the economists do, get the crystal ball out, but what do you think this is likely going to be now with all of that information for the 2023 story?
Well, we do know that markets start to move prior to interest rate peaks. So historically, that's been the case, that people start to borrow more, they start to be a bit more confident, particularly once that uncertainty is gone. So I think at the moment now, all that uncertainty is really starting to subside and people are feeling a little bit more confident about the outlook. So in terms of pricing, it does look like we're very close to the bottom, and so much so, Brisbane has actually seen a couple of increases over the last 2 months. What's really dragging it down is still Sydney and Melbourne, but even they have started to stabilise. So nationally, what it does look like is it's going to be stable for a bit, and once interest rates peak, ideally they'll start to pull back later this year. At that point, the market will really move again. But I think one of the things people do need to keep in mind is that markets don't stay in downturn for a long time. It's not like we're going to have a downturn. We just don't have downturns for like 3 or 4 years. I mean, this downturn will be all up probably 12 months.
Yep.
And then things will move again. So in terms of buyers, amazing opportunity right now if you can find something. So I think that's the problem.
Absolutely.
If you can find something. And sellers, if you do have a quality property, are going through these numbers, if it's something renovated, if it's something unique, if it's, doesn't need a lot of work done on it, you're still in a very, very good position.
Yeah, certainly the data that we've got not only just supports that, but it supports this real feeling of Brisbane has really short-circuited any sort of downturn because of what it has as that pillar at the end of our decade. And it's not just the Olympics. I mean, the Olympics is a big international story. We've got population pouring in, university students back in, driving that market. Ruben alluded to that in that Toowong precinct. First home buyers are coming into the market really because rents are going up. So why would I can see the end of my lease coming. I can see what other people are paying around me. I know my rent's going to go up. Why wouldn't I get in front of that and start to buy? And all of this is really leading to it. And just that basic supply demand with a bit of long-term confidence is really a good formula,
I think
Matt.
also infrastructure and employment's a big thing as well. Like the mining boom is looking like it's coming back to Queensland again. So Brisbane's that major city closest to where all the mines are. So I believe there's 27,000 jobs available or coming for the mines in Queensland.
There's no shortage of jobs.
And so you're looking at fly in, fly out of Brisbane. How good.
Yeah.
And Matt, I think you summed it up before. Overall for Brisbane, it's our livability. We are such an easy city. It's so relaxed living in Brisbane. And, so many people who have moved up from Sydney and Melbourne, it's incredible. You go to Melbourne and you say for Brisbane and everyone says, oh, we've just been to Brisbane. We loved it. Had no idea how lovely Brisbane was. And they're moving up here and then their friends are moving up here. So I think we're really finally getting recognised as a world-class city.
Yeah, there was a great case study. I think I shared it last quarter with the breakfast where husband and wife have moved up. He was bidding on the telephone. They'd moved up from Melbourne. I said, who are you bidding for? Oh, my sister. Oh, what was she doing? Well, they came up at Christmas. Now they're coming up with us as well. And it was real life stories of people that are tuning in. So to everyone that's watched us today, thanks. I hope the data and the information has been great. We do this every quarter. We've got 4 Ray White offices right across the inner city, based out of New Farm, Toowong, Bulimba and Clayfield. And then our rental business living here. We do a lot of work with Loanmark, which is why you can see their branding up behind us, and they're just an affiliate of Ray White, big part of our group. And we can't recommend that in this sort of investment market, interest rate market, do get to a broker. You alluded to that earlier, Nerida. If we can help you with any of your property inquiries, whether you're a landlord or tenant, a buyer or a seller, please reach out to us on any one of our websites. Ruben Packer Hill said in his session, we are currently receiving on our own websites more inquiry than some of the major portals, and that's because buyers want to get in front of the properties that are going live. So jump on those. If there's any information about today, reach out to us, whether you're watching it live or you're watching the replay later. From me, Nerida, thanks for coming again.
Pleasure.
Matt, thank you. Thanks, Christine, to our wonderful panellists, to Nick Given, Brandon Wortley, Scott Darwin, Ruben Packer Hill. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm Hazley Cush. It's been great to be your host, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.